Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. I'm here with Kenny Simpson. Coach, how are things in your part of the world?
Oh, they're going pretty well. My little boy's about to have his 11th birthday, so we're getting ready to go to Chuck E. Cheese and do all that kind of stuff. But
absolutely, Chuck E. Cheese for the kid's birthday. That's your strong man right there. That's
I sell fireworks, so we've convinced him that the 19th of June is we go to Little Rock and celebrate his birthday. But the reality is we go down there and I open up the fireworks store that I'm going to be running for the next 2 weeks. So
there you go. Always making money. I like it. Well, we are joined tonight by Coach Houston Nutt. Coach, if you don't mind, why don't you tell us about yourself?
All right. Well, Houston Nutt. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. My mom and dad, they all worked at the Arkansas School for the Deaf for 33 years. My father was the basketball coach, football coach, track coach, bus driver. My mother was an English teacher. And they met at Oklahoma State. And my dad played for two of the greatest basketball coaches in the world, Adolph Rupp at University of Kentucky, and then Henry Iba at Oklahoma State. And my dad's roommate at Oklahoma State was Eddie Sutton. So there's a background there. And my dad's from Fordyce, Arkansas. If you keep up with sports, I'm sure like a lot of your listeners, Bear Bryant, that's the home of Coach Paul Bear Bryant, was Fordyce, Arkansas, along with Larry Lacewell. Then not too far from there, Barry Switzer was from Crossett, Arkansas. So there's something in that water down there in that area. But I was a very fortunate victim of circumstance because I got to be around two great role models, teachers, mom and dad that loved four boys. I was the oldest of four. And then I got to play for guys like Frank Broyles, Lou Holtz, Jimmy Johnson, Eddie Sutton. Eddie Sutton's assistants were Pat Foster and Gene Cady, who went on to become great head coaches. So I just have a lot of great coaches that I had in junior high, high school, all the way up. So I was always around ball and always thought I was going to be in the NFL or NBA or both, but that didn't work out. And so when that didn't, I went into coaching and was very fortunate there. Got to be alongside Pat Jones at Oklahoma State when we had some great players, Thurman Thomas, Barry Sanders, Hartley Dykes. Mike Gundy was a quarterback who got to hand off and pitch the ball to Barry Sanders. And so he made everybody look good, but had some great times. And also, as y'all know, coaching, there's always some tough times as well. So got to have a strong family. I have a strong wife. I have four children and just very fortunate and appreciate y'all having me on tonight.
Absolutely. It's always an honor to have guys on with a pedigree like yours and a resume. Man, that thing is stout. Winning the SEC Coach of the Year a few years there, right? And were those all connected? You did it 3 years in a row?
I don't know if I did it quite 3 years in a row. I think they were spread out a little bit, but it was really a lot of good coaches, a lot of good assistant coaches, and a lot of good players. And it's not just always one guy, as you know. It takes a entire team, takes everybody, and had some good luck and some good fortune. But we also had some great players. You know, we're real fortunate to have some really good players that played extremely hard. And I was very fortunate. The SEC is a very tough conference, as y'all know, from top to bottom. It's the grind of playing each and every weekend. You got to be ready to go. And, I just was because of the influence that I have with the coaches, like Jimmy Johnson and Frank Broyles and Lou Holtz, they gave me a lot of wisdom that I took from them. And when you recruit and you have good players and you get them to play hard, it's the greatest feeling in the world. That's the thing I miss. I've been out of coaching 12 years now. And the thing you miss the most, especially when every time August comes around, boy, you miss that camaraderie with the players, the relationship with the players, and that competitive spirit on Saturday.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Coach, man, we're so glad you could join us and really bless our presence, man. We're stoked to have you on. Coach Simpson, before we get started here with the interview, why don't you tell us some ways we can simplify coaching for our staff and our players, of course?
Sure. Yeah, I'll quit fanboying here for a minute and go ahead and make my announcement here. So, Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Find Away Productions. Find Away Productions houses the Offensive Coordinator Academy, Defensive Coordinator Academy, and FBCoachSimpson.com, all coaching websites where coaches can go find whatever they want. If it's offensive materials, offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, defensive materials, defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, and finally, anything on the gun tee offense, the 3-4 system, or 31 different coaching books or digital magazines, all at fbcoachsimpson.com. Over to you, Daniel.
Awesome. Yeah, so we are also sponsored by Adaptable PT. That's the clinic that my wife and I have started. She is the brains behind it. I'm just the guy that talks about it on a podcast or something. That is Dr. Samantha Chamberlain. She leads the charge there. She really is big into PT 2.0, which is a lot about one-on-one care with your licensed provider. You should have the same provider every visit. You're not getting handed off or there with 5 or 6 other people. It's a very fitness-forward approach, which means it's an emphasis on correctly dosing intensity to make sure that you're getting the most out of your time and money and your effort. Also, Dr. Chamberlain is always learning. So much like people listen to these podcasts, that's kind of what she does in the world of PT. So she's always trying to learn the newest and best way to treat you for whatever it is. Her specialties right now are in geriatrics, athletic prep, getting your athletes ready to go into the season, and then that's injury prevention, or if that's performance-wise, and then concussion recovery. So, she's kind of at the front of the pack now with the science behind getting back from concussions. Back in the day, it was lock them in a bedroom and you don't let them turn the lights on or look at anything, and that's all kind of gone out the window. So that's where she's at big time. Adaptable PT. We're in Grove, Oklahoma. Anybody in Northeast Oklahoma, Northwest Arkansas, we're probably within driving distance of you guys, and Dr. Chamberlain would love to help you out with any issues you have. Also, adaptable, I put adaptable speed and movement. Here's the problem with notes. Sometimes you write the same thing twice. Athletic speed and movement. That's at athleticspeedmovement.com. That's where Joe, Daniel, and I have taken Del Basquet's 40 plus years of experience. We put it online for you to get to today. Right now, level 1 is open for purchase. It's a 12-week program. It fits right into your season. We are working on an in-season program, but really the base program can fit anywhere you want it. You need about 15 minutes a day, 2 or 3 times a week. Not a big deal. Fits in great with warm-up routine. Until July 31st, which the time this comes out should be just a couple weeks or so, you can get the introductory price. We got 50% off on that. So jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com and sign up today. All right, with all that done, Coach Nutt, we got a few questions for you, and there's no time limit on this thing. So we'd love to we're here to pick your brain. So whatever time you got available, we'd love to use it up. First and foremost, we're going to ask, who were your coaching influences? And then kind of how did each of those instill something, or what did they instill in you that you used in your coaching career?
Yeah. I want to go back, of course, again with my father at the Arkansas School for the Deaf. There's one deaf school in each state. I don't know if people realize that. And so it's not easy when you're coaching the hearing impaired. It takes a tremendous amount of patience and perseverance. And that's the first lesson that I've learned when you're teaching the deaf children. And my dad was so good at it because he came from a deaf family. And so that's where it all started for me. And then I had the privilege to have a great junior high school coach named Charles Ripley. He's deceased now. Joe Fred Young and Bernie Cox were my high school coaches, Clyde Horton. And then basketball coach, I had Eddie Boone. All these guys played a role, and we won a lot of championships. And then quickly, as I went to college, Coach Broyles was always buttoned up, a Southern gentleman. He coached the coaches, and I learned the really valuable lessons in recruiting being around Coach Frank Broyles. I was his last player that he signed and his last coach that he signed at the University of Arkansas. Lou Holtz came in when Coach Broyles left. One of the reasons I didn't go play for Coach Paul Bear Bryant is because I thought Coach Bryant would retire first. And lo and behold, it was switched. Coach Broyles, he retired my freshman year, and in comes Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was a strong disciplinarian. I mean, toes on the line, buckle up both chin straps. And boy, he held you accountable. And he was so smart and so good. Great motivator. Jimmy Johnson had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of passion, always knew which buttons to push, always very good. Eddie Sutton had the 3 Ds: dedication, defense, and discipline. And those three were very, very important. So you take a little bit from each one. You can't be Lou Holtz or Jimmy Johnson, because the one thing you can't do, you can't fool an 18-year-old or 19-year-old. You got to be real, got to be genuine, got to be yourself. But I took from each and every one of them, though, and learned so many valuable lessons with these coaches, and was very fortunate to be around them, learned so much. And then as you go, you kind of put your own thoughts in there. But you've always taken all my life from my father, the way he coached, the way Jimmy Johnson, all these guys coached. I got to watch them firsthand and coach alongside them. So I was very fortunate in that area aspect of it.
That's awesome. I know that in football, I feel like we see it more. We kind of see that coaching tree come to life, and it's usually scheme based, right? We see the air raid trees, we see the old gap scheme trees. And so I think it's neat that you had not only the football side, but basketball, and really got to pull from both. My mentor talks all the time about, Bud Wilkinson is up there in my coaching tree because he coached the head coach at East Central when Kenny Ridley was there. And then Kenny Ridley was my coach, and now we're, good friends, and I'm a coach. So I like to think that maybe I'm pulling from the information in that family tree and using it in my career, but it sounds like you've remembered a ton of it, right? Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. And, you talk about basketball. I love when players grow up and want to play football and basketball and baseball. I've noticed a lot of times, especially the last 15, 20 years, everybody's really tried to zero in on one sport. And I think my basketball time has really helped my football. Football helped basketball. And so I think it's important, especially when they're young, 7, 8, 9, 10, to let those guys play all different kind of sports. But there's things like now there's a lot of people, they want to zero in on one sport, just to do one thing, and you do it almost year round, and I think it's pretty hard. You can get burned out on that as well. But there's a lot of different ways to do it, as you know. But I got to pull from Eddie Sutton. I love the way he ran practice when he was organized. We were in great shape. And it's 94 feet of discipline, defense, being able to take a charge and all those things. But the thing about going from that basketball court to football was, you helped your quickness, your agility. And you know what? You had to be tough. You had to be tough and hard-nosed. A lot of times people say, well, basketball, you don't have to be tough. Well, tell you what, Eddie Sutton's practice, when you had Gene Cady and Pat Foster there, you better be tough and be able to take a screen and dive on the floor of that hardwood for a loose ball. All those things came into play to me for football. So I love watching Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was the guy that, man, he held you accountable. And what you saw on film, that was really the first lesson that I learned in 1983 when he would ask me who's coaching the fullback. And I had the privilege to coach his fullback. And I said, I'm coaching your fullback, Coach. Well, he went the wrong way. He didn't step with the 6-inch step. And you told me you wanted to be a coach. I'm watching this film, and he's not being coached. That hit me for the first time as a grad assistant, like, wow, am I really coaching? And evidently I'm not, because he's staying on me every single day about it's not getting done. When you watch the film, that's you. That's what you're putting on film. And so that was a young man, hard lesson for me early on about what's on film is what you're coaching, and it's your responsibility. It's easy to say, he just doesn't get it. Coach, I went over that play 500 times. That wasn't good enough for Coach Holtz. You better go over it 1,000 times or 1,500, or you better make it simpler. You got to do something better to make this young man understand. So it's lessons like that were so valuable.
Yeah, I got a couple of notes, coaches, taking stuff down. And first of all, I'm a big Lou Holtz fan. I've read his book too. Did a great job with his book. But we try to tell our coaches that just because you say it doesn't mean you coached it. And that's what it sounds kind of like what he was saying is if you're not getting through to them, you can talk to your blue in the face. I liked your other line about can't fool a kid, being someone else. I've got guys I look up to and I want to be like, but I'm not them. You have a natural charisma that I'll never have. So I can try to take some of that from you, but I can't make that be me. But I did have a question for you I was going to kind of lead into. And Daniel normally does the questions on this, but I'm going to jump in a few because we got you on here. So I'm going to take advantage. Yeah. So you've been out for about 12 years now. So but you're still involved in the sport. I know you're still kind of around it. So the changes are hitting quick and they're hitting very, very fast, not just with the kids, but the way you have to coach them now. You know, I've been around for a little bit, not as long as you have been, but it almost seems like warp speed with how the game is evolving as far as how you have to treat players to get them to buy into what you're doing. So what are some things that you're kind of seeing? You know, let's say you're coaching now, you have a head coach job you're walking into tomorrow that you probably have to be a little bit different than you were, say, 10, 12, 20 years ago.
Right. Coach, that's a great question. And you're so right. Things are moving at a very fast pace. You're so right. I do believe this. I do believe young people want two things. They want love and they want discipline. I really believe that. That's to me from the start. And I think it's the same today. Now, what's different, and you hit it, is now you add the NIL. I'll give you a great example. I'm at Chick-fil-A last year. They do a great job with this charity golf tournament to give away money for charities. And I'm on the first hole. Randy Etzel's my partner. Pat Narduzzi's in the other cart with Rick Neuheisel. And we get up to the tee on the first hole, and he says, guys, go ahead. He's on the phone. He meets us the second hole, and to make a long story short, we said, hey, Pat, what's the problem? He had a receiver, guys, that was a Blitnikoff Award winner named Addison. And he was on a trip at USC. Now, here's a young man that he coached, great relationship, won a lot of games, and he won the biggest award for receiver at the University of Pittsburgh, the Blitnikoff Award winner for having great hands and touchdown catches. And what's he doing? He's on the phone May 1st trying to convince his best player, don't go to USC. But here's the problem. USC had $1 million. Can you match it? He was asking Coach Narduzzi, can you match this? Man, now that is a different world. I want players to have money. I always voted. We went to SEC meetings, Coach. I always voted. I wanted players to have money. And I thought that's what cost of attendance. If you look right now, they still get cost of attendance money, which each school is different. It's around $6,000 a year. You get another $3,000 from some kind of lawsuit on the video game. So that's $9,000. Some of the players get Pell Grant money. That's another $6,000, $7,000. And you get all the food you want, the tutors, the education, room and board, tuition. It's a good time to be a student athlete right now. But what would bother me is how are you going to manage that locker room when they know that receiver is making $1 million and that left tackle is going to be knocking on the door? Coach, where's my deal? Do I haven't had a chance to make some money? For example, if I had Darren McFadden, coach, would have Walmart, Tyson. He would have every one of these. Everybody would want a part of Darren McFadden to be on the billboard, and he would make a tons of money. But in that locker room, with what I would really worry about the most is the left tackle, Felix Jones, the guy that's playing right beside him. Coach, can I get a deal? So now all of a sudden, their minds are not on what's the scheme, what's our workout. It's, hey, coach, what deal can I get? It's a different world. Then you add the transfer portal. Add that in the equation, and you hit it, coach. Just got through saying it, talking about coaching different. If you get on one, I would have to tell our coaches, if I was coaching a team, that, hey, guys, I want you to coach them hard. I want them to be coached hard. But I tell you what, if you get on one, you better go make sure you're in that dorm room that night, because he'll put his name in the transfer portal. You can bet somebody's going to get in his ear and say, hey, they don't really care for it. Come over here to this school. And you got that going on. So this is a different world, a different time. You mentioned warp speed. It is. It's fast paced, moving. And I tell you what, all hands on deck. Coaches, it's just amazing. When I talk to coaches, they don't like, most of them do not like the NIL. They want them to have money like we all do. But this, to me, is a little bit different animal where things can get out of hand. This is a slippery slope. I got my popcorn and Coke. I'm on the sideline. I'm watching this to see how this is going to turn out.
Right. That's exactly right. And the sad thing is, Daniel and I coach at the high school level, so we're not at that level, but it's coming. You can see it coming. The kids transferring and getting out, and it's working its way down. I mean, who knows? Maybe in the junior high in the next 10 years, who knows? What kind of craziness we're going to see. And like you mentioned, it makes it tough to coach, because think about at a college, it may be a little bit easier, but what if you're at a high school and you've got a kid on an NIL deal making 3 times the amount more than you're making? And how does just the relationships, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, Oklahoma actually put NIL into law last year for high school athletes. So we technically have an NIL system. I've not heard of anyone using it. I'm sure somebody is, real locally or regionally, just not around me. My only issue with the NIL, I'm with you, Coach. I think that kids need to be paid. But the money didn't come from where everybody wanted it to come from. The schools, the NCAA are still making buku cash off of players, and that's always been the issue where you're making all this money off their physicality and them getting hurt and them going through the reps, but they're still not paying them. Now it's the community has to pitch in. I'm a big OU football guy. I went to school there. I never played there. I'm not even close to that good, but so I have some skin in the game there. And now people are telling me that I'm not a big enough fan. I'm not a true OU fan because I can't send in $5,000 a year to pay for the next player's NIL package. And I'm like, well, at what point did my fanhood get brought into this? Because it just they really put the load back in the fan base. And I think that's unfair to us, and the schools and the NCAA are still walking out with all the cash.
Right. Oh, I'm with you. I'm just real curious, to see what's going to happen. I've already been told that there's been a couple of meetings of trying to put some laws and put some ceilings on this. And so it's just going to be real interesting to see which way this goes.
And then, Coach, you guys were the architect. I'm a big Miami Dolphin fan, too. So the architect of the Wildcat offense kind of came in my mind when D-Mac was back there taking the snaps and going at it. And I think that most people probably don't give that the credit it deserves, because now you're starting to see the evolution of, oh, well, that worked really good, and that guy couldn't throw it at all. What if we put a great athlete back there now that can catch the snap and do both? And to me, again, you've been out for about 12 years, but that seems to be the trend, even at the NFL level with, your Lamar Jacksons and those type of players. You're starting to kind of see that. Do you think the game continues to evolve that way, or do you think we see a swing back to more traditional passing, or is kind of the genie's out of the bottle now with the RPO, and that's where we're going?
Right. I think it's going in that direction. When you look at the amount of points that's being scored, it's just unbelievable. Back in the day, if you go back to when I was playing for Jimmy Johnson and Lou Holtz, one of our goals is, hey, just get to 24 points. Get to 24 points, play great defense, play great special teams. We'll be good. We'll have a great chance to win the game. Well, nowadays, you can't just say 24 points. You better get on up there towards 40. And so that's where we are. You mentioned Darren McFadden. The thing about that is when I hired Gus Miles on, he was using a lot of some of the Wildcat stuff. It wasn't until my brother Danny was coaching the running backs, and he knew Darren had played quarterback in junior high, and he knew that he had ball skills. He could hand it. He had a natural throwing motion. And I never will forget him saying, if you really want to make this Wildcat go, put Darren McFadden at the center point at the trigger snap. And we said, well, we're going to put the quarterback, just move him out wide, let him play wide out. And then all of a sudden this thing took off, because you take a direct snap to Darren McFadden, you got Felix Jones coming in lightning motion, and all of a sudden the eyes of the defense start moving, like, whoa, what's going to happen? Is he going to hand it on a jet sweep? And then you're running the same plays. We're running the power and the counter in the inside zone. So the linemen, it's nothing new for them. That's what I loved about it. The reps were the same. It's just the direct snap and getting the timing of the motion exactly right. You want the motion to be at that left tackle with the ball snap, hitting it full speed and that natural ride. Boy, Darren did a great job with the transition of that ball to handing off and then faking it and then hitting it with the power. Then all of a sudden he's gutting them. And as you mentioned, it went all the way to the NFL. David Lee was our quarterback coach. He took it to the Miami Dolphins. And it's amazing what happens. It always almost the same film. You asked Phil Foreman the first time we broke it out on him. He says, the eyes of our defense were just everywhere with the motion and worried about the jet sweep, and then worried about Darren McFadden, and you got to worry about a pass. And I tell you, it's amazing. And then you add a Patrick Mahomes nowadays. You look at these quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts and all these guys that are winning, they're not statues anymore. I love Tom Brady. But if you look at Tom Brady, well, that ball is out of his hands. He knows right where to go with it, and he knows protections. He knows all that. You got one of those, great, awesome, and you have a good supporting cast. But when I see RPOs, when the linemen look like it's run, it's almost just so unfair. That's all I hear about the defensive coaches complaining, coach. I'm sure you do too. We got linemen downfield 2 to 3 yards, coach, and we know it's run, but yet he's throwing the ball down the field. It's unfair. So you're always getting that part of it. But I think that offense is here to stay. I think for right now, it's full speed, that up tempo, no huddle. But to me, it comes back to this, guys. Who can run the ball the best? Who can stop the run the best? If you go back, I don't care if it's Pee Wee, junior high, high school, NFL, Super Bowls, the team that can run the ball, the team that can stop the run consistently are going to be world champions. And it just seems like it always ends up that way, even with all the, highfalutin offense and the RPOs and all those things. It's wonderful. It's awesome. But when it gets right down to it, boy, to have a good 4-minute offense and a team that can run it and a team with great defense, hard to beat.
Absolutely. Another thing I kind of going into that was, you brought up Gus Miles on, who I'm a big fan of him as well. And obviously a guy that rose up from the high school ranks, and then he went to the collegiate ranks. And you mentioned your quarterback coach was at college and went up to the NFL. I think a lot of people, when we watch football on Sunday, but a lot of times they're almost 2 or 3 years behind what's going on Saturday. And sometimes the guys on Saturday might even be 2 or 3 years behind the guys that are playing on Friday night. You're starting to kind of see, I think a lot of it is because a high school coach, we don't get to pick who we have. We got to just kind of make up what we got, and it wrinkles up,
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right, Coach. There's so many times I went to Friday night football. I love Friday night football, getting my popcorn and Coke and watching from the enthusiasm and warm-ups and things that they're doing. And you're right. So many of these guys are so good, so smart, and you can see they could fit right in on Saturday and could help a lot of teams on Saturday. No question about it. And same thing with the pros, as you mentioned. You see a lot of that go. But, the game used to be played in a phone booth, tighten everything up, and 2 tight ends and 3 backs and just going at it one another and good hard-nosed football. But now it seems like everything's from sideline to sideline. And the one thing that I've noticed, Coach, is I don't see as many middle drills. I don't see as many live tackling anymore. And the ones that tackle in space, when I go watch Georgia, Alabama, well, they're still tackling, I can promise you. So it's the ones to me that tackle in space and still have that toughness to them. There's something about that element of the game. And again, with concussions and all these things that we're studying, I think it's a fine line, to know how to handle your team. But I do know this. I think it's hard to say, okay, we're just going to go in shorts. Okay, Saturday, let's tackle to the ground. And you haven't done it. There's a lot of times I go to practice. I said, man, they hadn't tackled in a long time. They've had one scrimmage. How in the world are they going to tackle when the lights come on? And you see, there's a lot of missed tackles. And the other thing you worry about is, I think it's important that you teach how to tackle, make sure a lot of them know how, but it's so easy when I see that head drop. I always worry about when the head drop, their eyes are not up. They don't see what they hit. And that's what we're talking about with the head concussions and trying to keep everybody as healthy as possible.
Good. And another thing I was going to see, the next change that I see a lot, and I'm sure you do on your end as you're kind of evaluating all this, is the technology behind it now, where, we're having all the, the kids wear I call them the sports bras that track how fast they run, what I'm talking about. And then we have a little doodad we put on the quarterback's helmet that records the practice. And it's just insane how much the game seems to be, at least the players are, and maybe it's as coaches, that we're trying to learn from former mistakes. I wonder if we're going too far with it, but I do think there's some good parts of technology. What do you think of how that's really impacting the game?
Hey, it blows my mind. I'm like you. When I go, I watch CBS. Last night they send me to different places before the season got started. I've been with them going on 12 years. It blows the drones alone, that filming up above. I'm thinking, holy cow, we got a drone filming 1-on-1 or a middle drill or 7-on-7. And you mentioned, that, well, they can count every step, every heartbeat. They're just the technology blows my mind. And I remember when I got let go at Ole Miss, Nick Saban was nice enough to let me come watch him practice for 3 days. It blew my mind, the amount of attention to the little things that you're talking about, Coach. Especially after practice, there'd be certain tables where a young man, if he's overweight, he ate at this table. If he's underweight, he ate at this table. And then after practice, I'll never forget, they had 2 or 3 ladies with these like shish kebab sticks. They're about a foot of sticks with apples, oranges, banana, peach. I said, man, we're going to get them about 75 to 100 calories of fruit before they take a shower before supper to kind of helps them with their digestive system. Holy cow, I'm way behind because I never had anybody tell me about that. It goes back to what you're saying. The technology and the educational part of it with nutrition is at a completely different level right now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, LSU just started their air-conditioned helmet program this year, right? That's the new biggest thing.
I saw that.
And I'm like,
I saw that.
What are you gonna do when your 5-star defensive tackle makes a great hit and it breaks his air conditioner? And also, how much weight is that adding to the helmet? Has he got weighted gloves on now? Essentially, is this a UFC fight but with the head? Like, where does this stop? Things are getting absolutely crazy.
Unbelievable. I saw that and I heard about it, and I'm thinking, holy cow, now everybody's going to be wanting air-conditioned helmets. And I'm really curious on how that works. I'm really curious. I hadn't seen that up and close. I hadn't seen that live. I'd like to see what that looks like.
Maybe they're just faking it. Maybe they're just trying to get everybody else like thinking about weird helmets and changing technology. I don't know. Coach, we want to jump on into talking about player discipline and relationships, and I kind of want to go back to something you just said, and you were talking about not as many live contact drills. You're not seeing these middle drills. I talk all the time about get rid of the Oklahoma drill, and that's because every year I've seen a kid get hurt in Oklahoma drill, right? And I know that relationship, and not only with the parents, with the kid, but with the parents as well, we have to preach player safety, and we got to have the evidence to back it up. What am I actually doing to keep Johnny safe? Because numbers are dwindling. I've said multiple times now, Arkansas had a 4A team this past season that went 8-man. Like, right. You're halfway up the ladder of the biggest schools, and they're just like, hey, we can't get enough kids out to actually play an 11-man game. And so what you're talking about, there is that we still have to tackle. We have to be able to do it on Friday night, but I got to have kids or I can't play the game either. So that fine line you're talking about, I kind of want to hear you, go a little more into detail on that, where that is with the relationships and with discipline.
I think this. An 18, 19-year-old, or I don't care, 15, 16, whatever you're coaching, junior high, high school, college, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that is huge. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that to me is where it starts. That is so, so important. And once you get that, once they know that you truly care, I think now they're going to run through the wall for you. Now, as far as the physicality of it, I think you got to be smart. And what I mean by that is that's not to say we got to go tackle every single day. But I do know this. You put on pads, you can have a live thud, you can wrap up, you can really teach good hard fundamentals, you can be physical. One thing I loved about our teams is we were very physical without tackling to the ground every day. And then when we did say it's live, hey, it's live, and everybody got geared up. And when you go full speed, you're less likely to get hurt. The times you get hurt, my guys got hurt is when you're kind of going halfway speed, halfway this. That's when you got a problem. And so I want to go full speed, and then I want to pick and choose my times. And that doesn't mean every single day. But discipline, to me, it goes back to that relationship. I want them to do what's right when nobody's looking. But they also, once I got one at my house, away from a dorm, away from a locker, away from the field, once I had them at my house and I've had their parents, I've been in their living room, that's where I felt like I could get real close to a young man and let them know, look, I got your best interest. I want what's best for you. I want to try to reach every goal that you want to reach. But we've got the roadmap, and you got to do what I ask you to do. And so once that trust was there, once that bond was formed, that's when we took off as a team. And then I could have the seniors, I could have my seniors as those leaders, that's kind of the board members, in that locker room. Our best team was when our seniors controlled that locker room and did such a good job in getting the freshmen in line, the sophomore, the little trouble guys are having trouble. Man, when you have that, where your seniors and juniors are taking control and doing what you know that's right, now you've got something really special.
Yeah, the notes I put down. Yeah, you got to love your players, relate to your players. You've mentioned that over and over just in the 40 minutes we've been talking. And then I like how you finished with player-led thing on there. Daniel, I didn't mean to cut you off. I did have one other question on this, or kind of on this topic too, is, and Daniel brought it up with the numbers, especially even in our own state of Arkansas. What part of that I think is every sport. I'm not just picking on football, every sport. And Coach, you started off the podcast talking about they're going to one sport year round. So that's obviously playing a big role. And I can't speak for basketball coaches. I don't coach that sport. But you're seeing like football, it seems as though it's almost turning into a year-round sport. It's very, very close with a 7-on-7 circuit. You have like summer, we have team camps all the time. You have the season. And so as a younger coach, I made a lot of mistakes, and I'll kind of overcook the steak a little bit. That's what our guy Tony Holler says, the Feed the Cats guy. I kind of burnt the steak a little bit, and we were dead tired in October. So it took me a while to kind of figure out. So, if you had some advice to a younger coach, because I know at the collegiate level, it's got to be even crazier than that. I can't even imagine. What would you tell those guys to not burn their kids out?
Right. I think that is a great point, coaching point especially. One of the things I always felt good about Coach Saban, used to ask me in the spring, how does your team stay so fresh in November? And coming from him was a compliment. And we've always thought less was more. Once we hit about October, about that mid-year, they've been there all summer long. It's not like they go home for summer. They're there year round, working out, training. As you say, they're zeroed in. And we were in great shape. But we had this game that was 7 overtime, the longest game. I'm talking about when we did real overtimes. We played Eli Manning in Oxford. That game was at 8:30. That game didn't get over, guys, to midnight. And I never will forget Tony Bua. He takes that pizza after getting that celebrated locker room. That pizza was hard as a rock. I said, don't worry about it, guys. I saw a Burger King up the road. We got to drive back to Tupelo to fly home. We're going to stop at Burger King. We're going to get us some Whoppers. It was the best bus ride ever. But that next week, Coach, do what you're talking about. That next week, we knew we used a lot of emotion in Oxford, Mississippi. And now we're going to play 11:30 a.m. Saturday. We cut used to be the practice periods were about 20 to 24 periods, 5-minute periods, about 2 hours, 15-minute practice. All of a sudden, we went from there to 14 periods. And I had coaches look at me, Coach, 14? 14. And we're going to get this done. And that's 15 minutes of special teams. So, man, you better get it. And what we did, though, we got our legs back. And all of a sudden, I call the players and I said, guys, we're going from 24 periods to 14. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. What? Coach, 14? Here's the deal. You better make sure that you are laser focused. You better make sure you're going. All of a sudden, they're geared up thinking, we're going 14 periods. You get off the field. Now, they done bought in. It helped us immensely, guys. They're cutting that thing down. And what's amazing, our coaches found out, we can get it done. We might have to go out there maybe a little bit before and do a little walkthrough, but we saved those legs and got it back, especially that long game Saturday taught us something because nobody really expected us to be ready that 11:30 that following week. Didn't expect us to be ready. And we did it by cutting down practice, being smart, getting those pools, getting those cold tubs, and I'm doing all those treatment things. But the bottom line is we cut it. And every coach, if you ask them the first time, they'd say, Coach, we thought Coach Nutt was crazy when he said we're going from 24 periods to 14. He thought they really thought I was crazy. But we got it done, and I'm convinced. So ever since that time, we started going about mid-October. Once we knew we were in shape and we're getting ready, we said, guys, we're going to cut it down. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't start a period over every so often. That period didn't count, fellas, because you went through the motion. You didn't get us what we needed, right? So you always have some of those days. But overall, got their legs back.
Love it.
Coach, I want to go back. You talked about the Jordan Addison situation and how he got pulled over with NIL and the coach at Pitt couldn't match. And I don't really want to talk about the NIL side, but the on the recruiting side, do you feel like you're having to recruit your own? That coaches nowadays have to recruit their own locker room more? I mean, as you talking about relationships and yes, I've got to make them work hard to be good on Saturday or Friday or Sunday or whatever night I'm playing them. But kind of how does that relationship change when I can't just get them in and their name's on a piece of paper and they're mine for 4 years? Now, like every day I got to prove to them I still want them here.
Well, that's a great question. That's what's different. And, where they can at any time go put their name in the portal. And again, I don't know all the rules now. I know there's certain times they can put in, go out. I don't know that. Hadn't kept up with that part of it. But that again, to me, it comes back to that relationship. And I know that could be coach talk, but I mean a true relationship where there's communication. And I tell you what, that assistant coach, we all used to tell every one of our coaches, hey, you're the head coach of these 10 receivers. You're the head coach of these 12, 15 linemen. Man, you are the point man. And so I'd always try to make sure, hey, which one of these guys not having a good day today in the offensive line group today? And I try to go zero in. Or if a coach was getting on one, you try to go make sure that, hey, you're going to try to lift him up before that sun goes down. It's things like that. But again, I want to be honest with them and tell them, okay, if I set you in this, I'm going to put 2 chairs in front of the team. In this chair, when I put you in this chair, you're the football player, and I want you to have the attitude, hey, coach me hard. Coach me real hard, because I'm going to coach you extremely hard. If I say run through that line, run through that line. If I say get in that A gap, I got to have you in that A gap. And if I say protect the ball, that's the most important thing we have. We got to protect it with 3 points of pressure. Okay, get in this other seat. And I demonstrate. Okay, he gets out of this football seat. I think he's in the other seat. Now, guys, this seat is just the student athlete seat. Hey, how's your mom and dad doing? I heard you caught a 6-pound bass. Oh, that's awesome. And that's kind of talk where I get back in the other seat. Then I have him get back in the other seat in front of the player. I watched film, and you're supposed to block the outside line of the leg of the linebacker. You didn't get there. You just kind of went through the motion. You got to go attack that linebacker as a fullback. You know how to get back in the other chair. Hey, I heard your girlfriend came up last weekend for the game. It's that kind of here's the student athlete, here's the guy, here's the relationship we have. But when we're in between these white lines, guess what? I'm gonna coach you hard, and I need you to be able to have that attitude. Hey, coach, why are you getting on me? No, that's not the attitude I want. The attitude I want is, hey, coach me harder because I know you're getting me better. That's to me is what you're trying to get over to a young man. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy at all, especially with distractions. And there's a lot of distractions out there.
Yeah, I'm going to say too, Coach. So as you're saying this, all I'm thinking about, one, that's how we all want to be, coaching like they're our own son. Well, this year will be my first year. My son will be a sophomore. And so figuring out how not to call him in my room at home and look at film, and those 2 chairs become a little more difficult when you live with them. So any advice on that one?
Yes. That's a great one. Now, I would tell your son, number one, that he will be the most looked at teammate because of his last name. And that's okay. I'm proud to have you on my team, son. But just know this, those other 50 or 60 guys, they're watching. They're watching how you go through practice. They're watching. Oh, that's a coach's son. And if they see you going hard, if they see you take a lazy step, guess what? They'll know that one too. And so I would let him know, coach, that can't help it because of your last name. Your last name, you're going to be watched more than any other person. May not be fair, but they're watching you first. That's okay. I would embrace it because I don't think there's anything like having your son there. And especially, when he is up front and playing hard and helping his teammates win, there's not a greater feeling in the world. And that's the respect you want. But on the flip side of it, it's also sometimes it can be unfair. I've seen it where that's a coach's son. He getting pitted. No, he's not getting pitted. He's doing everything you're doing in the weight room. He's doing everything you're doing in the sprints, So just know they're going to be watching him. It's not easy, but I think it can be a great, great time.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, Coach. I think we've pretty much asked all our questions. So we're going to bump into our what some people may consider the favorite part of the podcast. We're talking about what not to do as a coach. And Coach Simpson's going to introduce our subject here. And if you have anything to say on it, by all means, jump in. Coach Simpson, why don't you tell us about the lesson of the day?
Sure. Because so Coach Nutt, we do this every episode. I just kind of do a do not do this kind of thing for coaches. And so this one, kind of bringing you on here, made me think about it. You mentioned some of your other coaches that were your models, Jimmy Johnson. And so you saw a lot of these guys in my mind. So our lesson for today is do not think you've arrived. A lot of times as a coach, we think we've done X, Y, or Z. So therefore we've kind of reached whatever we are, and others are beneath us. And what I've always thought was really cool about you specifically, and a lot of these other coaches you mentioned, was the way they would embrace ideas brought from anybody. This is going to help us when you mentioned Nick Saban now. I promise you 30 years ago, he wasn't bringing out fruit kebabs and handing those things out to people, but he is now because somebody, probably some young guy who knew, brought it to him and he said, well, that's a good idea. It can help us win. So lesson today was do not think you've arrived, because help can come from above. Bringing on Coach Nutt, you guys are probably getting great information from him, but it also could come from your 21-year-old right out of college assistant. So Coach, anything to kick in on that before we go over to sponsorships and all that stuff?
You know what, Coach? I love that. I love it. It's such truth right there. It's so good. We can all learn from everybody. And I love the way you phrase that. And I would always say this too, hey, look, guys, I may be the head coach, but all of y'all have suggestions. You have suggestions. And then once we decide on something, we decide. It's so easy to go get in a corner with 2 or 3 coaches and shut the door and say, I confess it's your fault. Not my fault. It's your fault. And you start bickering and this and that, should be doing this. Put everything out there. We may need you. We won't always use every suggestion, but there may be one thing, just like you said, Coach, there may be that 21-year-old that we learn something and take it that's going to help our team win on Friday night. You don't know where it's going. It may come from a senior. We may not tell him that we're using his idea, but he may had mentioned something to Coach. Hey, Coach, can we do this or that? We can learn from everybody. So that's exactly right. But once we decide on something, I think it's so important that it's 100% in. Yeah, anybody can sit there and second guess on Monday. We all have I used to go tell booster clubs, hey guys, if y'all don't mind, give me all your good plays, guys. Friday night before Saturday. A lot of y'all have great plays on Monday. I don't need them on Monday. Give them to me Friday night before Saturday. Well, this is what I'm saying to coaches, Coach. Hey, Coach, give me some good stuff now. And it's a suggestion. But once we say, hey, we're going with this format or this idea, there's nothing like it. We can learn from everybody.
Right.
I love it. Be a quarterback on Friday, huh? Quit being a quarterback on Monday. I love it.
Oh, there's a lot of more. Coach Simpson will tell you, there's a lot on Monday.
I have a lot of them literally about 3 plays after I called it. So they're on Friday, but it's a little delayed. So
it's the internet connection. You got to check that internet connection at the stadium.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, Coach Nutt, man, we're gonna pitch our ads here again, and we're gonna get out. Before we do, I just want to tell you thank you so much. Absolutely a blast having you on, and I learned a ton, and I know Coach Simpson's over here taking notes, and all the guys listening will be too. So thank you very much, Coach Simpson. Yeah, absolutely, Coach Simpson. One more time, why don't you tell us how we can simplify football for our coaches and our players?
Sure. Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Find Away Productions. Find Away Productions also hosts offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, and fbcoachsimpson.com as well. All things football. If you need material, it's there. You can also go to fbcoachsimpson.com/podcast, sign up for the next great guests we're going to have and all the other information we're going to have.
Awesome. We'll do social media on the way out here. Coach Nutt, if you don't mind, if there's anywhere a guy listening could reach out and pick your brain, where would you like them to contact you at?
Probably the email.
Okay.
The email you have at hdnx01@gmail.com.
Perfect. We will get that on
Yep.
there. You can catch me on Twitter at Coach Chambo OK, and then email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I'm pretty quick at getting back because apparently all I do is just thumb through my emails. I don't know. It's a habit now. Coach Simpson, where can we find you at, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So FB Coach Simpson is my Twitter handle, and then fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com as well. And Coach Nutt, great honor. I'm a huge fan of yours, and so really excited to get to talk to you.
You bet. Enjoyed it, Coach.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.